I had Elon Musk booked, but then when I heard about Dominic and he was available, I just had to call Elon and tell him,
Right.
sorry, buddy.
That's actually really good, and probably the first time I've been asked that question that way. So thank you for that. What do you want? Do you just want to work harder the rest of your life, or do you want to work smarter? If you don't have a plan, you're just going to wander in the darkness, wander in the desert for 40 years.
How does a business coach help us with marketing?
Do you know I actually sold a company because it was impacting the time of my family?
All right. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of On the Shop Floor. Now, today, do we have the best guest? I had Elon Musk booked, but then when I heard about Dominic and he was available, I just had to call Elon and tell him,
Right.
sorry, buddy.
Sorry, buddy.
Listen, you're only landing rockets, and we got cabinets to build here. So I had to put them off. So maybe another episode. But today I'm really, really excited with our guest. We've got Dominic Rubino. Did I say that right?
Yeah, you did. It's
Yes.
perfect.
And he's on the show with us. I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about what he does, and then we're gonna dive right in and do our darndest to move the needle for all of our amazing listeners. So
Yeah.
um, why don't you start with a brief introduction, and then, if you don't mind, I would love to tell the story of how we finally ended up connecting, because that was kind of
Yeah, I know.
funny.
It's kind of
A
random.
long time in the making.
Yeah. Can I do kind of a spicy intro, or do you want just a bland intro?
Listen, if you knew our listeners, they would say spicy and only spicy. We don't
So,
want to hear
okay.
anything. Yeah, go
Okay.
for
Okay.
it.
Okay. That's good. That's good. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm a doctor. I'm also a lawyer, and I'm a top OnlyFans model. Actually, I'm none of those things. I'm, I'm, I'm I work with cabinet makers and architectural mill workers and people in the closet industry, really people in the finished wood trades that are interested in the business of the contracting business. You know, at some point, I think we all realize the money's not in the sawdust anymore. It's not in the tools anymore. And so really my specialty and my whole team, we show the cabinetry industry how to work from the neck up on building a business they can be proud of.
So if we package that all up, would it be fair to say that you're a business coach? Is that the
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a business coach, but I have to say I'm a bit of a different business coach because there's a lot of theory business coaches out there. And I'm not knocking them. They probably have great intent, but I've also built and sold a number of my own companies. And I've been doing this for it's almost 25 years now, Brad.
Wow.
It's crazy. Yeah. I started in the year 2000. Turn of the century, that was back there.
A loaf of bread was 5 cents
It was
when I
fun.
started my business.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Okay, so then let's just talk about how we ended up connecting, which is totally fun, because we have similar but different practices in
Right.
that, we also do some coaching. But I always say I'm the productivity guy. I'm the shop floor guy. We have Lynn on our team, and she is on someone's shop floor right now, and so she couldn't be
Right.
here, but she is like shop floor hidden factory master. But now, when we connected, we had customers that would always talk to me like, oh yeah, my coach this, my coach that, and we're working with them on the lean side, and in
Yeah.
the background they're talking about their coach. And 10 years later,
It's
i
about time.
I
It
come to
was the most
learn that,
overdue meeting. Yeah.
yeah, their coach is this Dominic guy, and you were on my list of people to connect with for literally years,
Yeah.
literally like 5 years. I
I
gotta
know. Mine too.
eventually make it happen.
Yeah.
And then turns out we were both in Vancouver. Well, you
At the
live there,
same time. Yeah. We were
and,
both there.
and
And
I'm
then,
there, and we're like, let's do
yeah,
breakfast.
I think we talked on a Thursday and had breakfast on Saturday morning after
Yeah.
all that time of waiting. But you know what? It was going to happen no matter what. You and I were either going to speak at a conference or meet at a client site or meet the way we did for probably the longest breakfast in history.
We almost had to order dinner before they kicked
No,
us out.
no, that was awesome.
So yeah, I mean, so what was exciting, what is exciting for us at this stage of the game is the synergy between what you're offering and what we're offering. I mean, there could be some value in there for customers because getting things out the door faster is half of the
Yeah,
equation, but the other half is now I'm a cabinet maker, but I have this thing called a business.
yeah. What's
And,
that?
and what do
Yeah.
what do I do with that nightmare? So here you are, and you'll help us sort through that. Now, if it's all right with you, I'd just like to ask some burning questions that are
Jump.
on
Yeah,
my
let's jump
mind.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's say that I just called you, got your number out of the blue. Hey, Dominic, heard you're a business coach.
Mm,
What is what is step one for a company who's calling you? And um, throughout this conversation, if you could kind of like keep in mind, what if it was someone also who wasn't at the point where they could engage with you? What, as a business coach, what would be your advice along each step of the way
mm,
that would eventually get them to a point where they could?
sure. Sure. That's actually really good, and probably the first time I've been asked that question that way. So thank you for that, because it's different for everybody.
Right.
And the reason I say that is we all, we're all in the finished wood trades in some way, shape, or form, but we have different challenges, right? So let's say that there's one place in the world where there's a wood shop on every corner. Think of your city, there's a street called Broadway and there's another street called Main, and they cross, right? Actually, where I live, Broadway and Main's a horrible part of town, but just use that as an example. Right? But there's a wood shop on every corner. So there's four. And you think, well, those guys are all my competitors. They have exactly the same problems as me. But that's not true. The guy, on the left of your shop, it's two brothers that are running that business and they're second generation, but they're fighting because now the wives are involved and one of them's got their kid working there. Okay, so that's the other one, right? Then kitty corner, so right across on the other side, maybe they're just starting out as a cabinet shop, right? And then on the other side, they call themselves a cabinet shop, but they really do closets and a lot of built-ins. And then you're different. So you think we all have the same issues, but we don't. And so our job as business coaches is to clarify the issue. What is the main thing? And it always comes down to some simple buckets, just like it does when we're talking to a homeowner about designing their kitchen. They think, oh, we got the most unique view and you've never seen a setup like this. And we've got the first of this appliance and this is going to be crazy. And you're like, yeah, it's just an appliance, but you're excited with them, right? So it's the same. It always comes down to the same things. And people feel free to write this down. These are the buckets of challenges that business owners have in our trade. They are time, team, money, strategy, marketing, or sales. There's some other things I could put in there that run underneath that, which is numbers. I know
Mm,
you and I are both a fan of tracking key numbers. Or not, if you don't know your numbers, that's a frustration. But it comes to
right.
me that falls under the money, and it's also a measurement for any of the other things. So those are always the buckets that we look for, and then your plan comes from there. And that's actually where I would go next: is what do you want? Do you just want to work harder the rest of your life, or do you want to work smarter? Do you want to work less? Do you have a young and growing family? Are you a grandparent? You want to take care of your grandkids and pass it on? So there's always something different, but you have to have a plan.
Isn't that interesting? Because that, I mean, of course, the wheels are spinning already. I wrote down the five buckets, and I'm like, probably every company will have
Seven:
six, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What?
time, team, money, growth.
Oh, growth.
Yeah, growth,
Yeah.
growth or exit, and then we've got sales and
Strategy,
marketing strategy.
marketing.
Yeah, and of
Okay.
course it's never 100% of one and zero of the other.
Right. But that's what I was just going to say is like, probably each of us are have a propensity to lean towards one or a couple or the other, but we're really weak in some of them. Like we're discovering right now with my team,
Mm.
we're really weak at marketing. We literally build the best machines in the world, and nobody knows about it.
So we're a
You know,
secret. Yeah,
it's a top secret. Yeah.
yeah.
So so that's interesting. I'm sure each person is like, oh, okay, I got that one figured out, but what does it even mean to have a strategy?
And yeah, and do we need one? I mean, we're just cabinet makers. Do I need a strategy? But I do, you know, because if you don't have a plan, you're just going to wander in the darkness, wander in the desert for 40 years. And that none of us want that. That story was already written, right? But if you've got a plan, you can start to pick away at the plan. If you know what you want to achieve, and truly, some people don't know what they want to achieve. They're like, this is the first time I've looked up from my work. I realize I've got 2 employees. I know I've got to grow. And then they say, you know, but I got to take care of my mom. I think she's going into a care home. How am I going to do that? And they just go back to work, but they forget, you know, they want to take care of mom. That might take a few extra dollars. That money's going to come out of the business, or the time is going to come out of the business. So now we need to delegate. We need to have extra profits so that we can pay for mom to be in a decent place, right? Those are the real human things that drive the business need.
And is that something that you would walk through? Like you help people develop this plan? That's your,
Yeah. Yes. And you know, I'd
okay.
suggest that for everybody. The worst thing that I'll speak about ourselves as a coaching team, the worst thing that we could do is assume that we have the answers. We don't. And people might be, well, that's a waste of time. This guy's supposed to have the answers.
Yeah,
No, 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 no. We are supposed to have the right questions.
right.
Curiosity and cleverness will win the game every single day. Like ask really good questions and then think about it. And I think you do the same thing in lean. Like, why do we do it this way?
Yeah,
What if we, and those are all questions, right?
interesting. I mean, I'm like, okay, we're done. Thanks. I'm
Thanks,
gonna go
Dom. Agree.
start
It's an
working on those
agreement.
five
Yeah.
buckets right now.
Yeah. But it's
Okay.
incredible the variation that you can see within that. You know, there's only 26 letters in the alphabet, but how many poems can be written, how many songs can be written, how many books can be written? It goes together in the combination that you want.
Okay. And what about when people call you? Is there a driving force? Like, what do you find is the number one reason people
Hmm.
finally reach out to you?
I mean, they say different things, but usually when we get to a more comfortable place in the conversation, it's some flavor of, I can't keep going like this. And it could be for anything, right? Like, I can't keep going like this. My son-in-law, my daughter wants to take over. I can't keep going like this. I'm working all the time and we're not getting ahead. You know, I'm working as hard as I can. It can't be going on like this. We're not making any money, right? And it usually, if I listen carefully enough, the end part of the sentence is actually the most important part, which is, and it's affecting my family like this,
Right.
or me, you know, personally. Like somebody's got to, you know, it really is a human thing. But we have to ask the question and be wise enough to listen for the answer.
And when do you think people are ready for coaching? I was just hanging out with Art Byrne last week, and we're
Oh,
talking about a guy who, like, he wrote the book, the Lean Turnaround, and
mm,
he's been president and CEO of Wiremold. They bought and sold like 22 companies in his 9 years.
yeah.
And he said something that was just like mind-boggling for me. And he said, we're doing, he said every CEO should do a Kaizen once a month with their team.
Hmm.
And that was shocking to me. I'm like, wow, a CEO, like you as a CEO, he's like, yes, 100%. You need to be out there doing this Kaizen. And he said, I also don't recommend companies do it alone. And I was like, well, here's a guy who
Mm.
can totally do it on his
On
own.
his own.
And he's saying, you should probably get some help with your Kaizen events,
Yeah.
even if you're at the level he's at, which was surprising to me. So, like, to have a coach or to have someone who's been down that road there to keep you on track or hold you accountable or,
Yeah.
or guide you, like, what do you think your primary role as that coach? Why do you think Art says it's important to have someone there, and then why do you think it's important from your perspective?
It's such a human thing. I'm glad he said that. And I believe it as well. You know, from my own business, it's nice to have perspective, an outside party.
Mm,
And I mean, you have to find the right person for sure. Who is that person who can facilitate? Who is that person that can do it intelligently? But, you know, if I think about, I'll just think about my wife and I. My wife might have the greatest ideas. And do I really listen? And then Brad might say, hey, you know what, Tom? we should actually move that tree from that end of the yard to that end of the yard. I'll be like, that's fantastic. But my wife's been chasing me to do that for years, right? Just leave the poor tree alone. As soon as we dig it up, I don't want to have time this weekend. You're laughing.
Dude, this is a running joke at my house. You have no idea the chord you just struck, like literally, because I'm
Right.
talking to lean maniacs all over the world all the time, and my wife will tell me to do something, and I won't listen, and then she'll hear me playing messages out loud, right? And then like
Yeah.
the last one was from my buddy Greg at Xylem Design. He said to do something, and I was like, "We need to do that," and she just looked at me like,
She's like, I've been telling you that.
"Yeah,
So, you know how that shows up for me, and Brad, you might see exactly the same thing. So this might be an inside joke for you and I. Let's say I go and I present to a team, and I'm at the front of the room, and we're doing generally the strategic plan, right? So I'm at that boardroom level, especially in a larger company when they bring me in. We work with small companies too, but think of yourself in front of a larger boardroom of people, right? And I'm doing some model, and we're talking about forecasts, and we're talking about marketing and ideal customer and tracking our key numbers and stuff like that. But the president, the owner of the company, is at the back of the room, and he's got his arms folded, and I don't get to use the word glowering, like he's just glaring at me hard, right? And I'm at the front, and I'm thinking, oh God, I'm going to get fired by the first coffee break. This is bad, right? And so we take that coffee break. And of course, I walk over to this president, this big, well heeled president, this Brad Cairns. I'm like, hey, man, is everything good? And what the words that come out of your mouth are always the same. Dumb. Why is it when you say it, it's magic? I've been talking about this for 7 years and they won't listen to me. Right. And that's the
yeah,
frustration on the owner's face, because it's not that they're not saying it. It's not that they haven't packaged it. It's just that after a while, it gets wrapped up in all the other conversations about who got what parking spot and why did we change the coffee in the coffee room. Right. And so when I show up, I'm not saying anything different. I'm just focusing the conversation. And because I'm an outside party, it shines a light that people haven't been able to see before. And I'm sure it's the same with you.
like identical,
Exactly. Yeah.
identical." And you know what
It's
I
scary the first time you
remember.
see it, though. You're like, I'm going to get fired after 1 hour.
Yeah. Well, I've been telling that guy, I remember working with a furniture company, and it was literally that situation. We had him do something on a machine that they didn't want to do. And the
Right.
owner was like, I've been telling, he was angry. And I said, you just have to flip that, and you have to just be happy about that improvement, and get on with your day. Okay. So can we dive into those buckets each
Sure.
just a little bit? Like, can you tell us about the time, and then when it's time, what are you looking for? What are you fixing? If
Oh,
we could just
like the
knock
bucket
out,
of time, you mean?
pardon?
The bucket
Yeah,
of
when we
time.
look in the time bucket, like
Yeah.
for our listeners, like what are you looking for when you say time? What does that mean? What are you looking
So,
for?
so
Go
there's
ahead.
two things.
Okay.
The time gets broken into two. One of them you're going to love because it's operational time. But the other one is personal time for the business owner. And quite often that's the first one we're willing to give up as owners. I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it. Nobody can do it as good as me. I'll do it. And so, that takes on so many other flavors. Like, do you have the right team in place? Are you delegating? Are you being clear when you delegate? Do you have the right people to delegate to? Are people resisting you inside the company? There's a whole bunch of things going on there, right? So we try to put clarity in place first and then systems in place for that. Then when you talk about operational time, you're going to light up on that one. It's why does it take so long to get something out of engineering? Why do things always get held up in finishing? Why can we never get our samples back? The specifications from the customer. There's always these time things that are just grinding away at the business, but they're solvable. And so you just have to prioritize which ones we can go after first, what has to be attended to before that, and then pick away at them.
All right. So under time, I mean, that makes sense. And then the personal time is tying back to like the goals of the owner.
The goals of the owner. And again, you know what? It comes back to the most human of things. I can remember a guy saying to me, and he was really a successful guy. And by the way, this particular story is not a cabinet guy. This guy runs a very large handyman business, very large handyman business. And his big thing with time is he wanted to, he could already leave the office in time to take his daughter to softball practice, but he was always on his phone.
Hmm.
And she said something like a side comment to him, like, Dad, you never watch me when I'm doing my thing, because he's on his phone and he's still managing. He goes, I just want to be the dad who's watching. Like that. How simple and how honorable is that?
And relatable.
Yeah, yeah, right. and related. Do you know I actually sold a company because it was impacting the time of my family? Did you know that?
Really?
Yeah. I sold my last company. I had 237 locations and I sold it because it didn't match up to what I was doing to my little boy.
Wow.
Gotta go.
Gotta go.
Gotta
Hard
go.
decisions, easy
Right.
life.
I know I get to be a dad. I choose to be a business owner, but I get to be that kid's dad.
Giving me
Couldn't be happier.
goosebumps here.
Couldn't be happier.
All right. Now what about number two, team? Tell me about
Yeah.
what do you
So
look for? What do you fix? What do you ask so they know they have a problem?
yeah, well, so that generally people know they have a challenge, right? So a lot of times, again, the business owner's trying to recreate themselves or trying to do too much for themselves. But I'm going to do something that I don't normally talk about. There's an inflection point for a company, and it's different for everybody. But let's say it starts to get fuzzy. That buzzer starts going at about 800 grand, 800,000 in business, just about there. The business owner can't do it all. And one of the things we want for team is somebody to help them with the little details. And believe it or not, it's hiring an administrator.
Mm.
You're not going to see that in any textbook. You're just not. But look, I earned all these gray hairs and these wrinkles used to not be there. But I've come to realize that when we can't delegate effectively to somebody who wants to be that administrator, like somebody who loves tracking things and keeping the team together, and that person is critical to a growing business owner. And I understand the challenge. That's not a revenue generating position. I understand that. At the same time, that is the key component to getting out of that. You keep bumping into that $1 million mark around 800, 850. It's things are shaking. And you've probably heard me say this, Brad. You're running an $800,000 business on $700,000 systems, or you're running an $8 million business on $7 million systems. It's the same thing. We can't do that. We have to actually look forward.
Man, I just got told today I need a
Admin.
assistant. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you
Um,
need a very specific kind of assistant. You
mm,
need somebody who understands confidentiality. Can I just do this for a second? Do you mind?
yeah, go.
There's something that I talk about called circles. Let's use Yumi and Lynn as an example. Lynn just texted me, by the way, while we're talking. So
Hi, Len.
hi, Lynn. Yeah, let's use Lynn and you and me for a second. So there's circles, right? Let's say I'm the administrator and you're running the company. That would be a horrible choice, by the way. But there's a circle between me and you. There's things you're going to talk to me about, and I'm going to talk to you about that Lynn would never be part of. I also understand that there's stuff you and Lynn are going to talk about that I'm not going to be part of.
Mm,
There's another circle between you, me, and Lynn that nobody's going to be part of. And then there might be stuff that Lynn and I talk about that you don't need to really hear about, but you can if you need to. But there's circles. And so an administrator who's a gossip, who's just going to talk about what the owner's talking about to everybody else, that's very bad. No es
okay.
bueno. We don't need that. We need somebody who understands confidentiality. You need a senior, mature person who just understands the importance of that.
And it's funny as you say that, like we literally beat our head against that $1 million ceiling for, oh man, I honestly I bet you it was 10 years. And the minute we started putting the right
Yeah.
people in the right place, it was just like,
Whoosh,
we went from one to five, like, you know,
that fast.
yeah.
Yeah. And it never stops. It never stops. Having the right
Interesting.
people is just so critical because I can't do it all as a business owner.
Yeah, the saying that I heard, and you tell me if there's any validity to this, but if someone can do it 85% as good as you, they should be doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah,
that's a unicorn. A rock star can do it 85% of your capability. Although
right.
there's a gentleman, you and I both know him. He actually said to me the other day in confidence, so we're not going to share his name. He's like, my team's actually better on the tools than I ever was. But he's happy about it. He's in a place now where he understands it's not his job to be the best on the tools anymore. His job is to be the best at running the company.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I've heard this so many times from so many places that, as the owner, you don't want to be the smartest one in the place. And
No.
I gotta admit, and I'm sure people listening, they're gonna relate to this. I gotta admit, I was like, that is never gonna happen because I'm constantly fixing people's mistakes. I'm constantly things aren't getting done right. And I can say with the utmost confidence at this point, like watching the growth of our company right now,
Yeah.
people are having conversations that I don't even understand. And I think maybe they think I do. you know, but I just smile and
You
nod
smile and
and I'm
nod.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, is
Yeah.
it going to work in the end? And they're like, oh yeah. And I'm like, okay,
That
go
happens
for
with
it.
me and
You
my
know,
tech guys. All of
two
my
thumbs
tech
up.
guys, they tell me whatever. I'm like, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's just as long as that works.
So, okay, so that's exciting. Now, what about the money aspect? I'm sure
Oh,
everybody's chomping at the bit, you know, because
yeah.
that's what do you look
Money.
for? What do you do?
Well, I mean, listen, nobody has ever called me up and said, Dom, we're rolling in cash and I'd like you to slow that train down.
Just got too much money. We can't
Just so
count
you
it
know.
fast enough.
Yeah.
It's awful. Yeah,
Yeah.
gotcha.
But you know, money really comes down. There's so many. I mean, first there's 8 profit leaks, and this does not cross over into lean, but there's 8 places that a contracting business loses money, or loses is the wrong word. It oozes or it leaks out. And the real simple exercise for anybody who says, no, no, we're tight as a drum, we got that. I'll put a challenge in front of everybody here. It's called the $100 exercise. All right, the $100 exercise. So, everybody listening, I'd like you to think about a place in your company that drives you nuts. It's one of your headaches because you know you're either wasting time or money. And the equivalent of that time or money is $100 a day. So, can everybody think what their biggest headache is? Their biggest headache might be a people problem. It could be a process problem. It could be we don't have a return on our edge bander, so a guy's always walking and I see it and I hate it. Or how come we're not using rolling? You know, whatever the thing is. But that's $100 a day. If you work 250 working days a year, that's $25,000. You have a profit leak. Now, that's only half of the exercise. Because if I challenge everybody listening to find a way to make an extra $100, I think it's fair to say, let's find a way to save an extra $100 a day. So now we're going to save, using the same math, $25,000 a year. There's 50 grand. And by the way,
Right.
just to get back to the most human of all emotions, do you know what most people want to do with that 50 grand? I won't say most, a lot of people. This has been a trend for the last, I'll say 10 years, maybe longer, maybe less, is a lot of people want to homeschool their kids, but the spouse can't afford to quit working.
Right.
But who wouldn't want another 50 grand coming in to be able to offset?
And
You
I
know?
think like, and we talk about this too in the production side of things. Like a company that's, I mean, any woodworking company, doesn't matter how big or small, it's relative if you use a percentage,
Mm.
but you can lose $10,000 in 3 hours. Like, like a machine goes down or,
Yeah.
people call and say, you're not subordinating activity to your bottleneck. Like there's so many aspects. And when you put that $100 challenge out, I was like, oh my God, one spot in the shop. I could think of 10 spots in the shop right now that have $100 problem.
Yeah.
And it's probably not $100 a day. It's probably like
It's
$100
more. Yeah.
every half an hour or something.
Well, and let me turn this around. Does that ever end?
Right. No.
Right. So once I go find that $100, is there another $100? Is there another $10,000? Is it, people often think, Tom, tell me the one thing that's going to turn my business around.
Mm,
No, no, no. I mean, we can find one thing. It's, we're taking not a very polite saying, but we're taking a fat kid to the gym. It doesn't matter if he gets on the treadmill or gets on the rower, gets on the bike, or just changes his diet. He's going to see improvements.
right.
Same thing with our company. But what you really see improvements is a bunch of tiny little improvements, not one big one.
Man, this is like, I love it. The the
It's
the
but it's
cyn
really
the
what you talk
synergy.
about on
All I'm
the
thinking about is like, what would happen if we teamed up on a company? You know what I mean?
dun,
Like
dun,
you
dun.
fix the anyway. I don't want to get everyone excited. Let's keep going. So
Yeah.
what about with the growth? Tell me about what you mean by growth is one of the buckets.
So intentional growth is one of the, we have to grow with intention. And, unfortunately, sometimes we'll talk to people and they'll say something that, I'm going to summarize this. Dom, we're a $2 million company in a $2 million market. There's nowhere else for us to go.
Right.
We're fine, or that's it. And that's just not the case. So, but growth takes on so many different angles for so many people. I've also got cases where a dad, let's say a son and a father and son are in a business, but the dad's too young to step away. He's not ready to go golfing. So there's no room for the son or the daughter or the niece or the nephew to take over. Well, what do you do there? Right. And so we've had cases where somebody's come in and started, an architectural ceiling side to the business, or outside of the cabinetry trade, a landscaper. This was a great story. A landscaper, he did hardscaping, so construction landscaping. He was too young. But his son needed a spot in the business. And so what we ended up doing was building a lawn maintenance company, commercial lawn maintenance, and they got up to a $2 million run rate in like less than a year. Boom. Inside that same business. So dad could still be, you know, the big man on his side, but the son built his own business right off the side of the desk inside that
Brilliant.
company. So so growth takes on so many different angles, but our job is to find out what the owner wants and how that looks.
Hmm. I love it. And that kind of is a pretty smooth segue right into strategy. Because
Strategy.
I'll tell you, unless they're your customer, if they're a
Mm,
woodworker, I'd be willing to bet dollars against donuts that there is no strategy. So when you
no.
say strategy, what does that look like? How long does it take to make?
How long does it take to make a strategy?
Yeah, like if I was like, sure, let's do a strategy. What's that? What does it look like?
Yeah. So, I mean, if somebody's to do it on their own, it would take them a long time. We follow a format. The format that we follow is EOS, which I'm sure
Mm,
lots of your listeners have heard of. If people are
mhm,
into lean, then they're reading a lot of thought leadership books, and so they're probably reading a book called Traction. And if they
mhm,
haven't read that, they might be reading a book called Scaling Up. Those are two real powerhouse models for putting a business strategy in place. But a strategy is this is what people say. Dom, I got to get everything out of my head and onto paper. Like I just got to get it on paper, but it's so hard to do. Well, we have systems for that. We have manufacturing systems for just like a wood shop does, right? Our manufacturing system is how to get the dreams of the owner onto paper. And that piece of paper then becomes the boss of the owner because we never have to guess at what we should do next. We can always shoulder check that piece of paper. I say piece of paper, but we're beyond
sure.
paper these days. You know what I mean? But it's written
Yeah.
down, it's there. And you can check yourself against it. So what we do is we show people how to build a 10-year vision. Like, what do you want to do in 10 years? And I understand that's fuzzy, but I've got my daughter. Here's my 10-year vision. My daughter's going to be 29 in 10 years, and my son will be 25. For everybody else who just did that exercise, what did that immediately fire off in your mind? 29-year-old daughter, well, she might be married, might have kids. I'm going to be a granddad. Oh my God, where's she going to live? Right? So
Yeah.
you can see that. We can do the same thing with your business. But we take that 10-year plan and we squeeze it, and out of that pops a 3-year plan. That gets a little more clear, but it's still fuzzy. So we squeeze it again, and we get a 1-year action plan. And that sounds pretty good, but you can't really do anything with a 1-year plan. So we squeeze it one more time. And out of that comes, what do we need to do this quarter in the next 3 months? And that becomes the coaching agenda. Simple systems.
Simple. It's so
It
simple.
sounds it sounds simple. It sounds simple, but we've done it hundreds of times. And that the beauty is that it's a repeatable system that gives clarity to a business owner, right?
Right. And I heard an amazing saying, and it said, you don't rise to your potential, you fall to the level of your systems.
Oh, that's good. You fall to the level
So
of your
you could
systems.
be the
Yeah.
best woodworker on the planet, but if you don't have a system to help you along the way,
Yeah.
not going to get there.
Not going to get there. Yeah.
All right. How does a business coach help us with marketing?
You might be surprised. So, a business coach is kind of like a jackknife, right? Like a Swiss or maybe a Gerber tool, like a multi-tool. We're generally good at a lot of things, but we're not also specialists in unless we've got a particular specialty. But marketing is an important one, but it actually comes down to numbers, believe it or not. Because one of the things that, at least the way we do coaching, one of the things that's really important is that we do something called an end of job report. Some people call it an autopsy. There's different names for it, right? But
Right.
what did I estimate it was going to take to build that job? And what was the actual? And that's the first part of the exercise. There's another part called Profit Lab, which we run at the end of the job. I'll leave that for another conversation. But once we start to recognize the jobs where we do really well and the jobs where we do poorly, that tells us who our ideal customer is, because there's no use running after business if it's bad business, right? If you're making 29% margin on one and you're making 43% on the other one, which one do you want to go after? I'll
You're
just leave
looking
that
for
to you
high
to decide,
octane products. I mean,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes the variance is super simple. There's a cabinet shop who probably listens to this show that's in Pennsylvania, and all we did was separate their ideal client into zones. And zone one had a 53% gross profit margin, which is very good considering their overheads are in the 20 range.
Nobody listening is turning a 53% profit margin.
Oh,
So,
yes, they
so
are.
they need you.
Yeah. No, we do. Yeah. No, that's one of our clients, right? But that's a zone one client for them. That's a zone one high end kitchen for them. But the zone two goes from 50 down to something like 49 in zone two, and then zone three, which is it's based on distance. It's just based on a map on the wall.
Wow.
But zone 3 drops into the low 30s because of all the additional costs that come with travel, wasted transportation. That's one of the lean principles, right?
Oh, I mean, and when you're talking about kitchen cabinets, it doesn't end. You're missing one filler, one
Oh, yeah.
extra trip to a job site. Like everyone's like, oh, that's a $10 piece of wood. I'm like, no, that's $1,000 piece of wood.
It
Like
used to be a
maybe.
$10 piece of wood. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's big, big, big money.
Yeah.
So I get that. So you're
Well,
talking about,
that's
go
only the
ahead.
first part of marketing. Sorry to cut you off. All we've
Yeah,
done is
no, okay.
identify the perfect client, but then we've got to figure out their pains. Why are you the solution to that client's problem? Then we got to figure out their pricing. Now that we know our numbers, how do we price? And I'll leave on this because I just cut you off. We're in the greatest time ever to be in this industry, ever in the history of the world. And I'm going to sound like a geek and a dork right now, but we live in a time of price elasticity. You literally cannot charge enough for cabinets right now. People want schedules hit more than they want budgets hit,
Huh. Okay.
right?
I can
And
see
that
that.
means people will pay what you want to need to charge. So don't now is not the time to be shy on your pricing at all.
Interesting. Okay, so now you kind of struck a nerve, and I bet you just not only struck one here in the blue shirt, but about 1,000 that are
Which one?
listening when you're like, yeah, we have like this terrible zone 3 only has a 33% profit margin. I mean, the and everybody listening is just like, I would love a 33%
Oh,
profit margin. And I'm gonna look at a document right now that just got sent to me.
yeah.
Um, and it looks like this. Well, no one could see that because
I can't. Oh, okay. Is that out
no,
of the software?
yeah, I don't know. No, this is statistically speaking. Um, I gotta just zoom in. The Canadian wood manufacturing sector
Mm-hmm.
yields an average of 7.2%. This is useless with this
Yeah,
filter.
I can't see it there.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Oh, that's better.
7.2% profit margin on average for woodworkers. And probably a large majority of the people listening to this would also kill for a 7.2% profit margin.
Yeah.
So, like, is there somewhere where you start where you already know as a coach, you're like, listen, everyone who calls, this is the biggest lever. We're gonna pull it first, and then we're gonna get into the
I
rest. Like,
I wish there was, but I'll tell you what, it's the strategy side. It's just, and by the way, it's not magic. You don't start, you don't sit down with a business coach and 10 minutes later, like, hey, we're at 53% GP. Look at us, right? Those are the people who've committed. I bet you see the same thing in the lean journey.
oh,
There's a seasoning to it. Like, as soon as I start working with you, I'll be amazed at the results. This is fantastic. And then you'll say, hang on, Rubino, we've only just started. And then I keep working at it and working at it and working at it. And when I do a plus delta, when I look back on where I was in the beginning of the year to the end of the year, I'm like, oh my God, all of those changes seem so insignificant. But now it's an incredible result, or it seems incredible, but it's not. It's the same thing as I can't run a marathon. But I'll bet you today, if I decided to run around the block and then a block and a half, and then a block and three quarter, eventually, very eventually, very, very eventually in my case, it'd be 26 miles, but it's the same thing. Like you got to get started, and then you've
yeah,
got to commit. You got to stay committed, right? How many times have
uh,
you seen somebody get on the lean path and then just say, it was okay, but I don't think it's going to work for us.
95% of the time.
And yet it could work 200% of the time.
Yeah,
But it's the mindset of the owner who drives this thing.
totally, totally.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that's fascinating that you said strategy is number one. I share a quick personal experience here.
Mm,
We I say we because it was me, literally with a notepad one day, I just
yeah.
thought, what do I want in 7 years? What do I
Yeah.
want? And so I wrote it down. And then I was like, so what has to happen in year six, five, four, three, two, one? Just, and it was like high level, nothing, crazy.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, the minute I wrote it down, it started happening. And for 10 years before that, nothing except wishful thinking.
Yeah.
So why was that the magic sauce? And I mean that like I love that because that's the one thing everyone puts off doing.
Hmm.
You get involved and say that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
When we get involved with the company, the first thing we want to see on the lean side is we want to see measurements. Like I want to
Yeah.
know where you are, where you've been,
And what's
because once
track
we
record?
start going there, I want to know that
Yeah.
we can make a difference. And you know, we've actually to the point where we've actually created an entire dashboard for customers because we're tired of them not having the information at their fingertips.
Oh, the dashboard's
So
so critical. It's
right?
so
Like
critical.
as a business coach, if someone called you and you're like, okay, well, tell me about the business, and they just, you know, they open up their Kaizenify and show you like, here's our dashboard, here's our rolling 5 week average on our throughput dollars per labor hour,
That'd
here's
be
our
a
minutes per
dream.
P,
That would be a
right? You'd
dream.
just be
Yeah.
like, okay, let's develop a strategy and watch these metrics. And I think that there's not a like same with strategy, there's not an intrinsic value, there's not a dollar figure attached to it. Same with measuring. Measuring doesn't make you money, but having a plan and then being able to follow along with metrics, it's got to be
Is as we say that, there's people listening who say, I want to measure all those things, but I don't have the time. And I go
totally.
right back to what I said. It's this weird little thing: hire an administrator. And by the way, I mean a good administrator. Now, and maybe your cousin's doing it for you, maybe your wife is doing it for you, maybe your son, maybe somebody. Do you have the right administrator? And I'm not trying to knock who you've currently got, but do you have the right administrator? Because the people part of this whole thing is really critical. And you might have the right person, but you haven't supported or trained them right. You haven't given them clear expectations. That's why earlier I was saying it's hard to answer what's the thing, because we have to ask more questions. We have to enter with a lot of curiosity before we start acting like we have all the answers. We don't have all the answers. We can't. But we know
And
the
you know,
questions to ask, because you start to pick it apart, the layers. What's the hidden thing?
I'm just sitting here and I'm like, oh my God, this is something that we all need so bad because I'm gonna go out on a limb and say like some large percent, 80, 90% of woodworkers started in their garage. Someone liked it. They built
Yeah.
more, they ran out of space, they hired someone, they built more. None of us are business owners. None.
Right.
Not
Right.
me. Every lesson I've learned in business has been the hard way and usually
Mm.
the expensive way. I could have been a doctor 50 times over with how much money I've lost. Like, so when people think like, oh, can I afford a coach or whatever, it's kind
Yeah.
of like, can you afford not to? Can you afford another
Yeah.
$10,000 mistake?
Yeah. And I'm not here to convince anybody that they need coaching. Most people don't and won't ever,
Right.
which is fine. You know, there's to swap sayings, when the student is ready, the teacher
The
will
teacher
appear.
appears.
Right. And I'm sure you've heard that as well. That's a very wise saying. Right. But
Absolutely.
yeah, education or knowledge has never been more important. And even that sounds trite. Like, who doesn't know that? Who doesn't believe in that? But applying that knowledge is the real important thing. And then having somebody accountable to say, hey, did you do that thing?
I was just gonna say, it's what about the accountability factor? That's huge because I was
Yeah.
actually, we were talking robots with a customer who is your customer. I didn't know that at the time.
Mm.
And they're like talking about this Dominic guy.
Yeah.
And and I'm like, and he goes, you know what? He goes, half the time I don't have the thing I'm supposed to have done, but I know our call is coming on
So
Tuesday,
I got to do the
so
thing.
I get it done. And he goes,
Yeah.
otherwise I would just never have gotten it done. So you're not only like bestowing people with a lot of knowledge they don't have, a lot of motivation, a lot of systems
Right.
that they don't have. It's a big accountability factor there. And as the owner of companies, I can speak for myself. When there's nobody to yell at me because I'm not getting something done,
It's easy to not do it.
I mean, there's always something more important. Always, always.
Yeah.
So to have somebody that you've placed above you to be like, hey, get that thing done.
Yeah. And there's three other coaches on our team, and we all do the same thing. It's that accountability. But it's that, it's a respectful accountability. Business owners are extremely busy. And sometimes there's only so much that can get done. Actually, this is a little bit of a look behind the world of business coaching. Can I share
That's why we're here. Tell us.
it? So we talk about quality when we do our team trainings, because my coaches are very well trained, right? And so we talk about different accounts, we talk about what we're doing in coaching, we talk about coaching theory, adult education and learning, all of the things you'd expect. But one of the things that's really important to us is that at the end of any coaching meeting, and I'm going to use you as the example, Brad, you can only give the owner 3 action items between meetings. That's it. Of those 3, only one can be major. The other 2 have to be minor.
Right.
And 3's the
So
max.
smart.
I'm happy in most cases if it's one little thing, but that thing's got to get done. And if it's not done by the next, within, because we meet every 2 weeks, if it's not done, then okay, why? And what little part of that can we get done in the next 2 weeks? But that's how you just start to chip away at it. Because pretty soon, Brad starts to realize Dom's not letting this one go. He is a dog on a bone. Why does he need that number? LTV to CAC, lifetime value to customer acquisition cost. This is a weird number. Nobody else talks about this number. Why is Dom on about it? And every meeting, we're like, how's that number coming along? And eventually, you get there.
Baby steps, slow down to
Baby
speed up.
steps. Yeah. But you can only, business owners running a business. And quite often people are worried they're going to business. I don't have time for coaching. I'm already too busy. That's not what it's about. We're trying to reallocate how you're using time. Oh my God, Brad, this sounds like you on the floor, right? Isn't it? It's the same thing.
Don, I'm just sitting here shaking my head and I'm going, this is so synonymous with
Yeah.
the shop floor. Just
Yeah.
amazing.
I ate a bunch of synonyms the other day and I got thesaurus throat you've ever heard of.
Good God.
There's dad jokes on my podcast, right? they're all that bad.
So what how long have we been talking here?
I don't know.
We can't, we just
54 minutes and 15 seconds.
54 minutes?
Yeah.
We got to wrap this up. So can you give us a good closer, like whatever you deem fit that you think is going to help people the most? You've got 2 sentences to help them the most, and
Oh my
then
gosh.
tell them how to find you if they are so
Yeah.
interested and inclined.
Okay. Let me do this as a business coach. Actually, when you said 2 sentences, you gave me a great exercise. I'd like
Okay.
everybody to grab a pen and a piece of paper for this. And you don't have to
God,
think, you just have to write.
I'm ready.
Brad's already got a pencil right there.
I'm ready.
So here's the sentence. I want you all to write this down, and then I want you to answer without thinking. And so we're at the end. Is this going to go live pretty soon, this episode?
We don't mess around. We're lean, Dom. I'll have this one up before yours is up.
Okay, good.
No, I'm just teasing.
I pre-build and store, Brad. That's my strategy, which I know is intentional.
You need to hire a lean coach.
Okay, here's the coaching thing. In 2025, I want everybody to write this sentence down. In 2025, I achieved all of my goals because I ... So let me repeat that for you. In 2025, I achieved all of my goals because I ... What are those 3 things? Just write them, but don't think. So I'll say the sentence one more time because it's important. In 2025, I achieved all of my goals because I ... And whatever those 3 things are, just write them down. Now there's a second question. And Brad, this is the perfect prompt because this is the exercise. It's a 2-question exercise. The second question is this. In 2025, I failed to achieve all of my goals because I failed to ... So write that one down as well. In 2025, I failed to achieve all of my goals because I failed to ... Boom, boom.
That's a good one.
You don't even need to
I got
talk to me.
mine. I don't want to influence anybody with
Yeah.
my answers, but that's kind of neat. And I think the key there is to not think about it. Is like what just popped in my head. I just wrote down and I'm looking at it going, oh my God, this
Oh
is
my
deadly
God.
accurate.
Right?
Yeah.
Let me do something here. If somebody could, because we're at the end of the year, you said, how can people get in touch with me?
Yeah.
Do you mind if I tell, there's how to make 2025 your best year ever workshop coming up. We're going to do one in December to get ready for 2025. And so people just have to text me if they want to be on the wait list and then join me for the training. So we'll do it as a webinar.
Promote it, Dom. Tell us.
Yeah, just text me. Send me a message.
We're going to need a number.
Oh, you're right. 315-903-7853 and just say best year ever. And then I know to put you on the wait list. This hasn't even been publicized. So if your episode goes out first live before because we won't even publicize this for 2 weeks. So just get on the wait list and say best year ever and just text me 315-903-7853.
Awesome.
So
Now
there
I
you go, more
have.
value. And now, if they're totally bored with this episode, do not join the webinar. It's just boring. So, but
All right, and then I'm gonna throw out one more for the audience. For anyone listening, I wanna get your opinion on, do you think that Brad, Lynn, and Dominic should team up at some point? Do you think that there would be some synergy to have the business coach, the lean coach, all on the same team?
that's
Uh,
cool.
yeah, so shoot that to me, 519-494-2883. Text team up, and I'll post some results somewhere.
Oh,
Uh, and maybe just one day
maybe one
we'll
day.
we'll do that. We'll develop a little program for everybody.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. There's, I don't know if any other industry has what we've been blessed with here. And, I'll take myself out of the equation, but we got you, got Paul Akers, you got Nick Frost, you've got other just great people giving back. All the people with the industry associations. I don't know why Ken Kumpf is coming to mind. Just like such solid guys, Dustin
Hmm.
Hunter, like really solid people giving back in whatever way they can give back. And I don't know that, and I'm not ignoring anybody because I forgot their name. I'm just saying that, I think about the bakery industry. Is anybody out there as passionate about as injecting jelly into donuts as we are making kitchen cabinets? I don't know. This is the coolest industry in the world because we just care about what we make and we all want to get better. You know, I don't know
I
why I said
love it.
jelly donuts. Now I want a darn jelly donut, but
Well, okay, I think we've had everybody all tied up here for the better part of an hour. So I just want to like thank you so much for joining the show, sharing the 6 buckets. I'm sure we're all going to be writing that down. You threw down a little challenge for us. We're going to take it. I know I'm going to flip these questions over to my team like today because this is pretty cool. So thanks again, Dom. Really appreciate you being on the show.
yeah,
And I'm looking forward to the
I'm
future of what things can be now that we've connected.
Yeah, and people can hear you on my show, which is Cabinet Maker Profit System. So if you want more Brad, come to Cabinet Maker Profit System and hear him watch his YouTube video there.
But Don, let's face it, I think the only winning combo is both. People need
Mm,
to be tuned into to all of it.
yeah, it's a 1-2 punch. Thanks, Brad.
All right. Thanks, Dominic. Have a great day.